So in the Macintosh hard drive, go to the Applications folder and look for Photo Booth. There it is. Hello. Once you have it set up, go into the Effects, and you'll have to scroll over. The effect that we're looking for is Mirror, and it's this one right here. So it should be bilateral mirroring. With it set up, so whatever you have on usually the left-hand side, it's going to mirror on the right-hand side. You could probably use yourself to be able to do this to get some really cool effects. But to give yourself a white background, we can use a sheet of paper or it's got stuff on it. Yeah, we've got cardboard as you can set up. To make it like, sort of like that. Let's see. Okay, then you're going to use the objects that I have here. Found objects, things from nature. Leaves work really, really well. So I'll grab a couple of leaves, crumpled paper. Give me that board. That one's cool. And hand that shell. And we'll use a sheet of paper. Let's see what I can come up with. So if I did the shell, and you may have to hold it relatively close to get it big enough to be able to see, but all I'm doing is rotating it around and getting a variety of shapes to work within. And it doesn't have to be whole shapes, so if I think, hey, that looks kind of like ears, or maybe that's just the eye. So here's the acrobatic part. One hand, there we go. I'm going to hold it, the other hand. Flash a picture. If you want flash to be turned off, I believe under, let's see, there's a way of doing it. I think you can hold down the shift key and it will, yeah, shift and return will also do the same thing. So shift, make it bigger, and return gives you a countdown. Takes the picture without flash. So if that's going to mess you up on your light. And of course they're all going to be saved down here at the bottom. Let's see what some other ones look like. Crumpled paper is usually pretty cool. So take a sheet of paper and just lightly crumple it up so you get an object that looks like this. Then hold it up, start moving it around. Yeah, that's kind of a cool guy. I'll show you the ones that I did earlier. Sometimes you can get whole body armor, or like, you know, that would be an awesome chest plate if you had to do body armor. Let's recrumple it, see what we get.
Is there a way, I've seen some videos where they, and even in Photoshop or whatever software they use to paint it, that even that has a mirror on it?
In Photoshop, not easily. There's other painting software that easily does it. Manga Studio is one that's really good, or I think Corel Painter allows you to do it. Photoshop, what you would have to do is make a action where you record yourself flipping it. That's pretty cool. Let's see what the leaves will give me. I'll hold up two leaves together. Ah, kind of getting something. Ah. Uh-oh. Oh no.
Hurry. 3, 2, 1.
Some antlers going on. Hey, that's pretty cool. Let's try the gourd. Gourd would be just interesting to get the texture of it. Ah,
Ears.
ears or an eye. Oh, there we go.
Like a little puppy. See fish
Yeah?
in the nose.
Yeah. Little hands.
Onyx. Ditto. Oh, man. Lizzie May.
Like an owl type thing. Ooh, very
It's like an
owl.
old.
It's kind of interesting. You're starting to say, oh, it looks old. It looks like an owl. It looks like, this could be a good guy or a bad guy. Remember, we studied about triangles and shapes that are within your object.
Can you hold up 2 objects?
You can.
together?
So if I wanted that and let's see what I can get from those two.
So what in the
Huh?
A butterfly.
No, Cyclops
Oh, that's
with
It's like a brain.
Dracula Cyclops.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So this is kind of the fun part. Just coming up with different shapes, and people are going to find different things using the same objects. So even if you crumple up the paper, keep it. See if somebody else can find
Like a
something.
baby.
Yeah, look, or some sort of fly type thing that you're doing. Y'all get the main idea from it? Let's see. Did I download? But I've got all these pictures that I can pull from to use as the base of my monster, and that's essentially what I did for this guy. This guy was made up of a leaf, and I think the background of him was some crumpled paper that I put 2 of them together when I merged them into Photoshop. These were the ones that I did earlier to pull this one from. Let's see how big we can get it. I've also, plastic bags tend to work well. That one didn't show up too good. But here's different colored paper. Color paper tends to show up a little bit better than white, especially if you have a white background. Some ears like that. Also, larger objects, things that are about the size of your hand, tend to show up really cool. I like that one.
That's cool.
That's the one I use for the base of the background of my monster. It's like a samurai or something.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and that was just a
Looks
piece of...
like a llama.
So these are leaves. You can see there's the eyes that I used. Sometimes you get emotions out of them. Whole body. Y'all seeing the faces?
Yeah.
Very simple. If you can see an eye and the mouth, then you can make a monster out of it. These are just different things. Some of these are kind of small to really pull out something too good. Pine cones are also another fun thing. Vegetables, if you cut into them, will give you some really cool textures.
What is that?
I think that's just a piece of tree bark. Yeah. To pull from that. So this is the first thing we're going to do. I want y'all to jump on a computer, open up Photo Booth. All right, so to set up my document in Photoshop, we'll go to File and New. And I'm asking these to be 1200 pixels by 1000 pixels. So make sure pixels is selected. If you have inches, it's going to be a huge document. So if it's 12,000 inches wide, so 1200 inches wide. Height of 1000. If you're typing in pixels, resolution doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter if it's 300 dpi or 72. So, huh? Oh, I'm sorry, it should be 1000. Thank you for that. So don't worry about resolution, we're just doing pixels. So this is the size of the document that you'll be working in. I'll drag it off so we can see everything. So the first one, this will be my base. I'm going to drag it onto here. And you can see it takes up a pretty good bit, but I'm still going to scale it up just so it can take up the majority of my room. Here's a quick way of erasing away the background. Of course, you've got an eraser tool. An eraser tool works pretty much like a brush tool. You can change the size of it. Mine's pretty huge. There we go. And you could easily go in and try to erase away the outline of it. Another way of doing it, there's another eraser tool called the Magic Eraser tool. And just like the Magic Wand selects similar pixels, this not only selects similar pixels, but it also erases them away. So let's see what my tolerance is. That's pretty good. Keep continuous on. Oh, of course, it will get too much of the same thing. So since all of this is kind of one shade of white, let's bring my tolerance down. Let's put it at 10 and see what happens. So in one click, pretty good job. I can get rid of most of the background. Of course, it's selecting that. So maybe I'll do it the old-fashioned way. Another thing you can do, back up, if you click the mouse once in one area, so started there, hold down Shift and then click again, it will draw a line from where you first clicked to where you second clicked. And so this is just kind of a quick way of at least going in straight lines, erasing something out. Doop, doop. All I'm doing is holding down Shift and clicking all the way along. May want to make it smaller if you get into those little tiny cracks. Doop and doop. There we go. Now let's see what happens if I use my Magic Wand eraser. One click, boom, take out the background. Now all I'm left with is pretty much my regular eraser tool, just a little bit of cleanup along there. So I like this as the base of it, and I like this other photograph as the eyes. So let's add that one in. Yeah, there are my eyes. Same thing. Whoops. Looks like I set my color mode to be grayscale. Let's change it back to RGB color. No, don't flatten it. There we go. Now we get full color. Same thing for this one. I bet I can use my Magic Eraser and take away the background pretty quickly. Also pay attention to what layer you're on. In my case, need to turn off that background layer. Awesome, awesome tool. Let's bump up my tolerance. So I can very quickly take out more than I need. Use this eraser tool to clean it up. So I've got eyes on one layer, head on another layer, and now I can select it and place it exactly where I want it to be, change up the size of it, the scale of it. Use my eraser tool to clean up this other edge. And I wanted a little bit more down here. Yeah, I like the mustache. I could have kept that. So that's why I use this other one. We'll place it in here too. Make it a little bit bigger. I'm turning off the visibility of my other layers so that I know I'm only working on this layer. And use the Magic Eraser tool to quickly knock out the background. Be careful you click on the right spot. Right there. If you want to get the crosshair, if you hold down your caps lock, it'll show you exactly where you're clicking. It's one thing I don't like about the new Photoshop. The things are off by a little bit.
It what?
Huh?
You said it what a little bit?
In older Photoshop, For instance, you would think right where that star is on the eraser, that's where you should click. But it's actually right at the point of the eraser is where, like if I click there, sometimes it's off by a little bit. So if you want to know exactly where to click, hold your caps lock down and you get a crosshair. I can know exactly the point to choose from. Alright, so I put that one on. Let's even put it behind it. I think I rotated it. Don't feel like you have to keep the same orientation. Rotate it all the way around. There we go. And that gave me, kind of filled out that. There you go. A little bit more to work with. If I did want to get rid of some other things, so let's say I didn't want that or any of that, of course you can use your eraser tool. Just easily erase things away. But the main thing is I'm building this up. Also, if I want this layer, this needs to be a little bit darker. Everything else is pretty dark. So I've selected that layer. I use the levels adjustment to darken it up, make my darks darker, lights lighter. So now everything's relatively the same value. Another thing you can do to make it a lot easier, especially if you have a lot of color, I prefer to make everything in black and white first and then go back in and add my own color. So at the top of everything, I'm going to add a black and white adjustment. That's this one here. And it's just going to turn everything straight black and white. So now I'm seeing everything just for its values, and I'm able to make proper adjustments from that one. I lost everybody. Let's see. And if I wanted to lighten up the whole thing, maybe doing a levels adjustment on top. Okay. Looks pretty good. So that's a good start for a base. I can always go in, erase away little things that maybe I don't want to have. So if I didn't want to have the mustache, I kind of like the mustache. See if I can center them up a bit. There we go, much better. As soon as I have all of this set the way I want it, I want to flatten all of my images together. To do this, if you didn't know how, select all of these layers. So I don't want them to be individual. I'm going to click on layer 1 all the way to the top, and let's see if it's there. With your little drop-down menu at the top, choose Merge Layers. And so all of those layers are now merged into one single layer that I can work from. From here, to add color to it, I'm going to make a new layer on top of my mask layer. And I'm going to set this blending mode, instead of using normal, at the very bottom we're going to use color. So this time, if I choose my paintbrush, and I'll open up my swatches. Ooh, somebody loaded up some funky swatches on here. Let's see, let's load up my, where's my default? Oh, well, I'll have to find them later. Oh well, so if I load up any color, so I'll use this particular shade of blue. I'll choose a regular paintbrush. The next thing I'm going to show you, as soon as y'all set yours up, is how to adjust your brushes to paint. But anything that I paint on layer 1 that's set to color will only colorize what's below it. So now I don't have to worry about choosing a lighter and darker. If I want it to be blue, I can paint it blue automatically. And it stays relatively the same. So for mine, you don't have to have everything the same. I would paint this particular area red, I'd paint one area gold or orange. I can blend colors together. Remember, if you want something to blend really well, change your paintbrush from a hard edge to a soft edge. So I'm bringing the hardness down to 0. Then when you choose another color, say red, shows that as a background color. I'm just going to swap both those out. Oops, I accidentally hit the color picker. Swap those out. And so it'll blend a little bit better. Rather than having a hard edge, it'll transition more to that. But the main thing, next thing I want you to do, don't worry about the colorization just yet. I want you to set up the face in black and white the way you want it to be. Okay? Pick and choose the different things that you created, cut, move them around, rescale them, anything that works best to get to this particular point. So this next part is more about how to add the color and how to do different things, and I'll go back over some more things. So I've merged all of my black and white image down to its own little level. And I'm going to be mainly using my paintbrush tool to do the painting and colorization for what I'm working on. Let me show you one thing if you didn't know this or if you just need a refresher. So I've got my paintbrush and I'm working on this very top layer. If I just start painting, in this case with red, of course it's going to paint over all the pixels that are below it. What I would like to do is to be able to stay within my own object. So in other words, not have to worry about painting outside of it. And to do this, I'm going to create a clipping mask. Now to do the easiest way of doing it, if you've got layer 1, hold down your option key and click in between both of the layers. Notice how it changes to that, and it should look like something like this. So anything that I paint in this layer will only stay within the pixels on this layer. Option and click allowed me to do that. Now watch what happens when I try to paint on top of this layer. See how it masks it out? So very quickly you can stay within something and not have to worry about erasing it or having to go back over and redo it. If I change my blending mode now from normal to color, automatically I can very quickly colorize what I'm working on. And it's a little bit more forgiving. So let's say I wanted to color this in. Let's see, I'll choose red. Another thing I can do at the very top, I'm always going to keep my mode at normal, but I'm going to adjust my opacity of the brush that I'm using. Making the opacity smaller instead of at 100%, usually I work between 20 and 40%. Good enough. I can build up whatever color that I want to work on. It'll start off really light, but the more I go over it, the better the hue I can get. And this helps out when blending to give myself a lot better, more natural type blend. So if I wanted this area to be lighter, I don't have to go over it as much, but if I did want one area to be a little bit darker or to be a little bit more richer in color, all I gotta do is keep going back over and over again. Here's another helpful tip. If you use your keyboard shortcuts, rather than always having to go back up to opacity and readjusting this number or changing the slider, if you'll press the number keys on your keyboard, 1 through 0 will move it in increments of 10. So if I know I need it at 20%, press the 2 key, and well, if you don't have it selected, press the 2 key and it'll automatically type in 20. Press the 4, goes to 40. And so very quickly, 0 is 100%. I can jump in increments of 10 just by using my keyboard to be able to paint in what I need. So if I know I want to paint very quickly, I'll jump and hit 8, and very quickly I can color that in 80% red. And jump back down to another one for what I'm working with. I'm also using my tablet. If you have one of those, it tends to make painting a little bit easier, but everything that I did for the previous one, I just used my mouse to be able to do it. And so if I wanted to blend these colors, let's say I wanted it to start off red in one area and turn a little bit gold, so I'll choose maybe a yellow goldish type color. For some reason that's only filling in my background color. Oh well. I've got my opacity at 20%, and so I can easily blend one color into the next color for what I'm working on. Pretty cool? Let's say I wanted the bottom part to be blue. This is the fun stuff. You get to make your own creation. We'll do it the same on both sides. Yeah, that'll be fair too. You can vary up the color that you're using. So in this case, if I wanted it to be a little bit darker on the back, maybe a dark purple. But in general, staying within a color scheme tends to help out your design. We're getting crazy tonight. I'll darken that up too. Cool. So that's it, the basics of just adding color for what we're working on. If I wanted to start adding objects and actually painting in, say I wanted to paint in the eyeball for what I had the other one, I'm going to make a new layer. And with this layer, this is what I'm going to paint in the object that I want to work with. So the eyeball, I'll just make it a base color of like white. Change my brush to be just a hard-edged brush. We won't worry about the size of it. Ooh, pretty big. And we'll just let it to fit in that socket right there. I'm only going to make one of them. I do want it to be slightly bigger, and I'm not too much worried about the size of it. Now, if I want it to fit in here, rather than having to worry about painting in and getting right up to the edge, I'm just going to go ahead and make the round form. If I go over to my layers palette, let's see, I'll make another layer on top of it. So I've got my eyeball right there. On this one, I'm going to add my shadow shapes. So choose black or choose a dark gray. We'll choose black. Drop my opacity down to, we'll do 10%. Make it really soft edge so everything will blend together. Let's see. Oh, no. There we go. And since the eyeball is a sphere, just kind of shade it like you would a normal sphere at first. I'm going to rough it in just quickly. Now to make it actually fit inside of this, I'm going to go back over to my layer that I have the eyeball on, and I'm going to make a layer mask on top of it. So clicking this one adds this layer to it, and you know anything that you paint black in a layer mask will mask out that particular area. It's kind of like erasing, but you got the ability to undo. So now wherever I paint, and I'm painting with black, let's make it 100%, I can get the eyeball to fit inside that shape. So I'm cutting it out. If I need to undo that, just choose white. And then I can go back in and get it to fit however close into the socket that I need it to be. As soon as I'm satisfied with how it looks inside the socket, go back over to your layers, choose my shadow layer, and then continue painting black on top of it. So we'll make it larger, drop my opacity, just make it look like it's going to fit. A little bit darker. Pretty cool.
Could you do the same thing when you notice like red or green, yellow?
Yep. You can make it any shadow color that you want on top of this. If I change the blending mode for that, it would help it out a good bit. If I wanted to add a pupil to it, so let's give them, a dark green eye. Make it some sort of monster type shape. Also, be sure to zoom in. This will give you a lot better control over the little details. You don't have to work so small. Why isn't anything showing up? What layer am I on? Oh, I'm on the wrong layer. We'll vary up the color of that, make it a little bit lighter in some areas, darker in others. Have the center of it be solid black. Oh, there we go.
Could you put that whole eyeball thing mask you got through a photo filter and change the color of the whole thing if you want to?
Yes, yeah, you can. Anything that's on a layer can be filtered in Photoshop. If you wanted to add little red streaks to it, so like he's got some veins or something, We'll drop the opacity of this one, and then just kind of paint in some. Of course, it's hard for y'all to see up there. I'm sorry about that. Goofed a little bit, made that a little darker than it probably should have been. Another thing to make it a little bit realistic is to add a highlight to your eyeball. It gives it a little bit of a shine on one side. So if I was to zoom out now, I've got an eyeball that's stuck inside of it. I'm painting in the elements that I need. And that's all within these two layers. Since it's symmetrical, all I need to do to get an eyeball on this side is to select both. Well, don't do that. Hold down Shift and select both of those layers by clicking on those two icons. And you can drag them down to the new icon folder, or icon, a new icon, new layer icon. So here are my copies. With them both selected, to flip, go to Edit, Transform, and we're going to flip it, in this case horizontally. And there's my eyeball. It's been flipped. And just kind of place it into place over here as well. That gives you the basic idea. But the concept that I just showed you was, first of all, you're working in a clipping mask to colorize what's below it, and you're using a layer mask to erase away areas to get them to fit in particular areas. Also, be sure to change up the opacity of the brush you're working on, make it harder or softer edge depending on how you want to blend something together. But you can easily go in and paint in anything else that you want, making it whatever color that you want. To make things stand out a little bit more, you can also select your background layer. Rather than working in a solid white or a solid color, one thing I like to do is grab my gradient tool and working from whatever the foreground color to transparent is, just choose a color. In this case, we'll do a darker brown. And give it just a gradation of color. Rather than a solid color, you can use two different shades of the same color, going one from each side. It gives it something with a little bit of depth. Even if you wanted to add a body to it, you could paint in shoulders or a neck or something else down here at the bottom, and it makes it stand out from there. Cool? Okay, so the next thing you'll be doing, add the layers on top of it, make a clipping mask, and start adding color and extra objects to the things you're working on. So with painting, the idea is to use some of the colors that are already a part of your design to add on to it. So for instance, I don't just want this to stop right here. Maybe I want this to overlap a little bit and give it a little bit more shade. So I've created a new layer, layer 4, and this is what I'm going to be working in. It's just a normal layer. I'm not going to change up the color modes. I'm just going to be working with my brush, changing the opacity and the size of it. If you hold down your Option key, you can toggle between the paintbrush and the eyedropper. And with the eyedropper, you can choose colors that are nearby. So I know if my shadows, I want them to be maybe this darker black or maybe a dark brown. Highlights need to be something maybe along this type of value. So if I wanted to continue this ridge on down, I'll zoom out so I can actually see what I'm working with and start painting with it. Let me pick up this local color. And then I'm building up that particular shadow with it. Let's get a little bigger. And since I'm working in a lower opacity, it tends to blend pretty well. Let's maybe pick up some of this color. Place it into there. Now you're just starting to add on lights and darks. Same thing for this side. Picking up that color, plopping it down. If I feel that shadow's getting too dark, pick up a lighter color, and just lighten it back up. So I'm not really working with white and black, I'm working with whatever colors that are a part of this to add on to it. And so now I've changed up the eyes to give it something different. If I wanted to add something like veins or a skin type texture, say if I wanted to do something up the top. Usually veins are just kind of a dark streak. So there we go. Give myself a hard edge brush. Up the opacity. There we go. So one main vein and several like smaller veins. So there's the pen tool. Several smaller veins going off of it. You can draw tree branches. You can draw. And I start off with the shadow of it, but even a vein has lights and darks within it. Then I'll pick a lighter color and go on one side of it to lighten up that particular edge. So it looks like it has kind of a rounded form. It's essentially a cylinder underneath your skin. I'll zoom in so y'all can see that. You could even have almost nearly white. Color hitting the highlights of it. And if you zoom out, you know, it's adding some little texture to it. May not be as easy to see from a distance up at the top. You can add whole other body parts to it. Earlier I was drawing like a tongue down at the bottom. So if I wanted, there we go. Give it a hard edge, some sort of tongue wagging out. Block in the shape of it. And then choose like that local value. Ooh, too dark. Drop the opacity of it and blend it in with the rest of it so that it looks like it's actually enshadowed by that. If I do need for it to be round, right now it's looking pretty flat. I can choose that color and choose a darker or a lighter version of it. Drop the size of my brush. And then go along the edge of it, give it some sort of rounded type feel. If I really want to do a good job, I would look up what tongues would look like instead of having a cartoonish type looking one. And even highlights. So choose that color, choose a lighter version of it. Y'all kind of get the idea. But I'm painting onto it what I'm using. And use the colors that are already there or use colors that are local to it to stay within your design. In other words, you wouldn't want it to be too hot pink to use from there. When you're ready to save it, of course, you can save it as a Photoshop file. It saves all your layers, or you can flatten it down as a JPEG to be a little bit smaller of an icon. To turn these in, I do want you to print them off. So we're not going to upload them to Moodle. Print them off on the color printer, and of course these will be due when the main project is due with it as well. So if you don't finish it up tonight, you can continue working on it as well. Any questions so far? Cool. Alrighty.